Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome back to another anime review. Today, we look at a very old anime, and the concept that why I'm reviewing it, I'll explain in a couple minutes. But we are looking at Neon Genesis Evangelion, or just Evangelion. Now, I'll say this right now. I never realized I never have reviewed the original stuff. Like, this is the original actual 26 episode series that came out in 1995. I had never reviewed this. And I was like, it was only because my friend, she just had finished the actual show, and I was like, "Oh, you finished the show?" She's like, "Yeah, I want to see your review if you have a review for it." I'm like, "Oh crap, I don't have a review out for this. Holy shit!" So I realized it, and I'm like, "Yeah, I gotta do a review for Neon Genesis Evangelion." So thanks to my friend, I'm glad she told me, like, even that I didn't have a review for this, because I'm like, wait. I didn't even realize it, because this is I consider this is one of my top 100 anime of all time, and I think a lot of people consider it that, but also the fact that this show is something that I've always wanted to talk about, and I guess I've never gotten around to, which is kind of sad. But anyways, let's talk about the actual review. Let's focus on that. So, Neon Genesis Evangelion, like I said, is a 26 episode series, came out in 1995, blah blah blah. But the concept is that what we have here, the basic story, the very simple form of the story, is that we have a young man, Shinji Ikari, who ends up working for Nerve because his father, who is the head of that division, actually wants him to pilot a mecha unit, which is called Ava Unit 1, which is apparently only suitable for him. He must pilot it because while there are other pilots that could per se pilot it, he is the one that's going to be the one that actually can use it perfectly. And the problem here is that he doesn't want to. And the thing is, I know people, like, you can go on any listing of top, like, hated characters of all time in anime. I guarantee you there's very few I've ever seen that have not put him on the list of Shinji Ikari being somewhere on a top 10 or top 50 or whatever list of being the most hated protagonist of all time. And the thing is that I understand why. I mean, Shinji is someone who constantly moans and groans about everything. But I want you to understand something, folks. Realistically, look at the pilots that we've had in anime before, especially the young teenager ones. We've had a whole slew of them. We've had people that are very preppy. We've had people that have been in the same situation as him, like they don't want to pilot something, but then they do, and all of a sudden they're like the best pilots ever. Which, by the way, was the word new type back in the day. We've had every type of pilot around. And the thing is that Shinji Ikari is something that I can think of as the perfect example of someone with teen angst piloting a mech. He's going to come into a mech. He's not going to want to save the world. He doesn't want to do anything because he doesn't want to do this job. He doesn't want to have the responsibility put on his shoulders. But even more so is the fact that, this is what I think would be the most realistic pilot. Like, this is what I would see a teenager going through. We have people like Amuro Ray from the old original Gundam. We have people like Hiro Yui. They get into the pilot seat and they are like the best pilots ever, even though they complain about things sometimes or have very melancholy tones about certain things. They go into them and they're like, oh, I know how to use this thing. I know how perfectly to execute everything. The very first episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion, Shinji gets into the mech, he pilots it, it falls right over like that. Like with the snap of the fingers, he falls over and trips. That is what would happen realistically if someone was thrown into a giant suit and told to pilot it. Okay, I don't care what show has done this in the past. I mean, there's now new shows that have tried to do the same thing that I think Evangelion did. I mean, Broken Blade, which is a movie series / TV show, what was very cool about that was it had the main character kind of tripping over too, and I'm like, oh, Evangelion, I remember that concept. So newer stuff is trying to do this once in a while, but realistically, a lot of times when people get into the mech seat, they are like the best pilots around, and I've always kind of disliked that because I'm like, this is Shinji is the one that would be the kind of realistic version of someone trying to pilot a giant suit. I mean, just let's be honest here. Now, remember, I'm trying to review this from two angles. One is that this is one of my favorite shows. Like I said, this is not the favorite show of everything, but this is one of my favorites. But also, I'm reviewing this in the concept of present and past. This is 1995, folks, to 1996. We are now in 2016. We're about to go into 2017. Animation has gone a far, far distance from what came out back then. But even so, Evangelion is one of those shows that I think still holds against the testament of time because it still looks great. It has some strong animation, it has some strong visuals in general. The character designs were really well done. The mecha designs were really well done. Excuse me, couldn't get that out of my mouth. They were really well done. It just in general, like, I mean, this whole thing of how it looked was something very unique for back then, but at the same time was something that even today is still great. Now, the strengths and weaknesses of Evangelion are almost like the same edge of a coin. You know, what works for Evangelion is the story with the whole concept of biblical slash, philosophical slash mythology stuff. It throws in a lot of things that if you really aren't well read into the world, you might miss a lot of these kind of metaphors and kind of thoughts and theories and concepts. It would help if you really want to understand Evangelion at its core, you might want to read up on some various things. Like, you can go to Wikipedia sites and wikis and all that and understand what you have to read exactly. But I would say read up on some kinds of biblical stuff, read up on some stuff of mythology, etc. Those really kind of help you understand a lot of the thoughts and theories that are thrown into Evangelion. The story for this show has always been something of a kind of, I want to say, explosion of just different thoughts and emotions and theories and kind of crafts. It's always about like this concept of angels being what essentially is destroying the world, because it's like giant creature monsters that are just called angels, and how they're destroying the world to kind of reshape it. And the Eva units are kind of like the demons that go against them, and it's kind of ironic because they're the ones that are fighting for us and going against the tide of angels, which, I mean, if you think about it in the biblical sense, you think angels are supposed to be saving us. In this world, or at least in Evangelion, it's the kind of opposite, which is always very, very interesting. And you can read into that in many ways. I mean, even, for example, the movie titles like Death and Rebirth and The End, those are things that they go into your mind and go, oh, that makes sense. Evangelion is one of those shows that if you watch it more than once, you will understand the story at a better angle. But if you are one of those people that only watches something once, which is completely understandable, because, I mean, not everyone watches a show multiple times, Evangelion's story kind of almost hits you in a good note and a bad note, because you will be confused by certain things of it. You will definitely be confused by certain things of it. And I don't want to kid you guys and girls. If you watch the show and you don't really pay attention to a lot of visual things and a lot of concepts, I mean, even the opening alone has like thousands of little references and homages to various biblical senses and lore. You will be lost. And I think that's the thing that works great about Evangelion, because it makes you want to rewatch it again. But at the same time, if you're one of those people that doesn't want to rewatch a show after watching it, or maybe even don't want to go into it years later, it's a double-edged sword, because you're going to like the story and you might also hate it. So that is something that you have to realize about Evangelion. But the story being the only problem I could really think of, everything else I have no issue with Evangelion. Voice acting and music was always something that were top-notch, even from back in 1995. They were always well done. I love this show personally, so enjoyment factor, I really do give it a high enjoyment factor. Animation, like I said, the designs for all the characters, the mech and all that were really well done. And I think that for the most part, there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. I think that's what really works for this show. Now, I am going to be honest with you guys and girls. I want to review this in a sense that I'm pretending like this is the only thing that exists in the Evangelion world, because I know we have movies now. We have the newer ones, the Rebirth series, that's the 1.11, etc. We have, of course, the movies that actually end the series, which is Genesis Evangelion, the end of Evangelion. I'll tell you right now, by the way, folks, watch that. You will understand the full ending of the show if you watch that actual ending. Death and Rebirth is a kind of recap slash little bit of twist, because it makes it where the very end of it kind of does make it so you can go into Evangelion, the end of Evangelion, in a different way. But it's not necessary to watch that, because that's kind of just, like I said, recap for the most part. But overall, if this is the only thing that exists in my mind, and I'm trying to go as unbiased as I can, if I had to review this between A through F, I have to give it a solid A-. Like I said before, the only thing that I have issues with is I know the story will be what turns off most people. Besides the whole mecha genre thing, I mean, mecha genre has always been something that even today still turns off some people from things. But this will be one of those things that people will be like, I don't know about the story. It seems kind of confusing, or people will go, I don't fully get the characters. I don't get why they're doing certain things. Why are they doing this or that? That's going to be the biggest weakness. Everything else for the show, even for today's standards, will be something that you will like and enjoy. Even if you are very casual about anime, even if you're more critical about it, you will love what you see about Evangelion. Anyways, guys and girls, I hope you enjoyed this review. As always, if you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share the video, the whole nine. Until our paths cross again in the next review, have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.